Just a few days into Russia's invasion in Ukraine, President Zelensky created a so-called Foreign Legion and called on people from around the world to come help Ukrainian fighters on the ground. Less than 2 weeks later, around 20,000 people from more than 50 countries had answered that call, including roughly 3,000 plus Americans, according to Ukrainian officials. Among them are some U.S. veterans who've been training Ukrainian fighters in urban combat and survival skills. But as one such veteran recently wrote about in the New York Times, after returning from a trip to Lviv, there's a lot to weigh when deciding whether to pick up and head overseas on your own to try to help. U.S. Army veteran Matt Gallagher is the man behind that piece and joins me now. He's also the author of the Iraq War memoir, Kaboom. Matt, it's good to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate you having me on.
What'd you do exactly when you were in Lviv a couple of weeks ago?
So our mission was separate than that Foreign Legion. We, a group of three of us, all combat veterans of Iraq or Afghanistan, we flew over and we worked with a civilian defense force that has been standing up in Lviv, prepping them on very basic urban combat tactics and survivability. People, teachers, bus drivers, welders, folks who have really never had a day of military training in their lives, just to give them some basics for if and when the war comes to Lviv.
Why'd you do it?
Well, I thought of the old Hemingway line, for whom the bell tolls, for what are we born if not to aid one another? It felt like a very clear purpose and clean mission. A friend of mine and one of my fellow trainers, Adrian Bonenberger, had a connection to the Lviv City Council, so we knew there was a need. It was just a matter of getting up and going and doing it, and that's what we did.
You know, it was only one line in your piece, and you just mentioned it again now. The thing that I can't get over, and I don't know why it struck me even more in your piece, when you said what you just said, bus drivers, business people, churchgoers, parents, those are not usually your comrades in the work you've done in the military. Isn't that like an out-of-body experience?
Somewhat, but you know, these people see the war coming their way. They have cousins, they have friends who have already suffered tremendously in eastern Ukraine. So they showed up day in and day out. You know, maybe they're not technically soldiers, they don't have that background, but they took this as seriously as any soldier I ever served with, or ever trained with, or went to combat with, because it is an existential threat. Their sovereign democracy is under attack, and for them, it's not notional the way it is. I think for a lot of Americans, it's their everyday life, it's their neighborhood, it's their livelihood, and they want to be prepared to defend themselves if necessary.
Do they feel fear?
Some fear, some anger, a lot of resoluteness. You know, one thing I do want to stress to your viewers is, you know, the national unity that we see on television screens and on our computer screens. That is very real. You know, Ukraine is a democracy. That means people are going to argue, people are going to have problems with each other. All of that has been set aside. It was really inspiring watching people with all kinds of different views and perspectives coming together in this fight for their existence.
Like to see some of that being put aside in this country, but that's not happening anytime soon. Is there I am surely not a military historian, but other than the Civil War in Spain right before World War II that I think most of us read about in our history books, is there precedent for these kinds of numbers of people from this country fighting in someone else's war?
This type of numbers, maybe not, but you know, in the American Revolutionary War, we had Frenchmen come over and support our cause. So you know, in the fight for freedom, the fight for democracy across history, people from across the globe have banded together to fight for each other. And you know, the Spanish Civil War is often the precedent pointed to. I would say the difference here is, you know, the good guys in Spain lost. They lost to the fascists. Yes. I have no doubt that the Ukrainians they're going to win. They're going to win this one, and they're dug in for however long it takes.
Is there other veterans like you who've decided to do something? Is the Hemingway line the common thread, do you think, or has everybody got their own deal, their own motivation?
I think everybody has their own deal, their own motivation. You know, some folks, they just have that gene in them, that helper gene to get up and go. Others really maybe have some messy feelings and memories of Iraq or Afghanistan. Others, you know, honestly, just kind of want to shoot some Russian invaders in the face. And I don't say that flippantly, because an existential fight like this frankly, you need people like that.
Well, you also say there's certain people you don't need doing this, even if their intentions are good. Could you describe the two, I don't know if I can call them camps for lack of a better expression, people who you think, if motivated, maybe should consider going, and those who, even if motivated, should probably not?
Right. Yeah. In my essay, I kind of divided it into two: folks who know they can help Ukrainian people in need, a special forces medic, for example, who has a certain amount of time off and knows that he can train others on combat medicine and also treat wounded refugees. Of course, there's a need for somebody like that with that background. Maybe somebody that just wants to help and doesn't really know how. Maybe their intentions are good. Maybe their intentions are a little messier than that. They're figuring that, oh, I'll just show up and I'll figure it out from there. No, there's plenty of those already in Poland and Ukraine, and they're really becoming kind of a burden on the local government and the local power brokers. The last thing Ukraine needs right now are folks like that. So unless somebody really knows a specific need, a specific purpose that they can contribute to on the ground, they're better off staying at their home and finding more indirect ways to support.
What's a goon?
Yeah, those folks just kind of milling about, becoming a burden. My friends and I labeled them goons, and they're bearded, wearing a lot of fatigues, letting everybody know what they're there for. And no, the last thing Ukraine needs right now is more goonery. You
left out one descriptor. You said in your piece that they were loud, which I think captured the image for those of us not there quite well. But you also have a caution, Matt, for people who fall into the first category, the helpful category. While it is legal to go, you make that point, at the same point, an American being captured by the Russians would be hell. Could you flesh that out a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt that when we were there, it was something we considered in our security posture, right? That there'd be no bigger propaganda coup for the Kremlin right now than to find an American veteran, a military veteran working in whatever capacity over in Ukraine right now, and claiming they're a CIA spy. It's proof of NATO's direct involvement. Whatever. I think we all know that Russians the Russian government will spin whatever they need to create some kind of mistruth, and that's a really dark, serious possibility that I wanted to remind anyone going to Ukraine, whether military veteran or not, to consider that there will be people looking for you to turn you into a cautionary tale.
Matt, I want to add a third category, if I may. When you talked about that second category, you want to shoot somebody in the face. There's a need for that. They're also extremists. They're also neo-Nazis, for example, who in some ways would clearly play into the fictional narrative that Putin has tried to create about the Nazification. He's going to rescue Ukraine from the Nazification of Ukraine. How does anybody keep that kind of individual away? Is it doable?
I think that the Ukrainian authorities are figuring that out. My piece talks about how some of the different paramilitary groups that are standing up now, they've taken it upon themselves to weed out any kind of Western extremists trying to show up and for their own kind of misguided reasons. The Azov Battalion is a group of far-right extremists that are fighting for Ukraine. Something I do try to remind people is, yes, those folks are very real, but they're also a group of maybe a few thousand. Ukraine's a country of 44 million. And again, they're a sovereign democracy, not without their own problems, which I think anybody in America can understand. But they were invaded. They were attacked. War is never black and white, but from my opinion and from my vantage point at least, this is about as black and white a war as I've ever been alive for.
You don't mention this much, but as you've been there, you've trained people. I sit on my couch at night and watch this, and while I understand all the arguments about the threat of a nuclear war if we get more involved, when you were there or when you came home, do you think we as a country, not you and your colleagues as individuals, we as a country are doing enough?
I think there's always more to be done. I think we're trying to walk a fine tightrope, and I think it's important to stay on that tightrope. Direct involvement, in my estimation, would be a catastrophic mistake. But in terms of weapons, in terms of financial support, there's always more to be delivered, and it's important, I think, for us as individual Americans and and to stress to our elected political leaders to take our cues there from Ukraine, right? To on the micro level, not getting involved and not saying what they need, right? This is the macro version of that. Taking our cues from our fellow democratic people that just want to live the same kind of peaceful everyday lives that we take for granted so often back here in the States.
Matt Gallagher, thanks for your time. Thanks for your piece. It's good to meet you. Thank you.
Nice meeting you. Thanks for having me.